and welcome to Heritage Week. We are proud to celebrate this fruitful week. We have a lot of engaging discussions coming up. Yesterday, we had a great conversation with Adil Najam, who gave us a great overview of the Pakistan diaspora. One of the biggest reasons we're celebrating not only this week as Heritage Week, um, because of Pakistani Independence Day, but it is also APF's 15th year and ongoing. So big round of applause to all those who have kept APF on the ground and running for the past 15 years. My name's Iman Zahir, and I was the manager for Heritage Week. So any Heritage Week things you've seen so far have kind of been my crazy ideas all coming together just from a few months ago. And big thank you to Mustafa, who's joining me as a co-host today. Um, for those of you who didn't know, Mustafa and I are kind of going through it right now. I'm a bit cold, and Mustafa had a unruly doctor dentist appointment earlier, so bear with us. But we're excited for today's discussion. Mustafa, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Man. Yeah, so my name is Mustafa Muhammad, folks, and I'm co-hosting today's webinar. I've been involved with APF since April, and I currently also serve as the Northeast Ambassador for the Northeast region. And then, I'm also in charge of the Leadership Council. The people who are joining the APF Leadership Council, I'm involved in having a conversation with them and then onboarding them. We're really excited about this webinar and hope folks get a lot out of it. Iman, I'll send it over to you for the introduction for the panelists.
Awesome. We have two great guests with us, one of which who is a part-time executive administrator at APF, Hania Chima. Outside her work, she is an award-winning film producer based in New York, actively engaging in the film and TV industry. As a creative producer, she has played a pivotal role in bringing compelling stories to life on screen. Some of her notable achievements include co-creating and producing Laal Kabootar, Pakistan's submission to the 2020 Oscars. Big round of applause. A feature crime thriller theatrically released in Pakistan and Australia that played at international film festival, including Palm Springs Film Festival, Chicago South Asian Film Festival, and it won Best Film Awards at Vancouver South Asian Film Festival and Seattle's Film Festival. Also with us, we have Bilal Sami, is also a Pakistani American filmmaker whose multifaceted career spans acting, writing, and producing, which is absolutely amazing. As a producer, his credits include the upcoming David Blaine documentary series Do Not Attempt by Imagine Entertainment for Disney Plus, which is, as many people know, a huge network. And the critically acclaimed feature I'm gonna probably not pronounce this very well, but Dobara Phir Se,
Dobara
otherwise known as Deja Vu, if I'm correct, which he also wrote, and the Pakistani crime thriller Laal Kabootar with Hania. And he was also a consulting producer on that. He's also directed the music documentary Done, featured at London's festival and the South Bank Centre, London in collaboration with artist Rashid Rana. Sami created the public art project Stories We Tell for the inaugural Lahore um, biennial in 2016. After running his own boutique production company out of Lahore, he established the new media and syndication divisions of Middle East media giant Geo Entertainment between 2018 and 2020. I hope that was correct as well, and has
Oh,
been involved in projects across Pakistan, UAE, UK, and US. He began his career as a teenage television actor in Pakistan and received a Fulbright scholarship for his MFA in film. With a lifelong passion of storytelling, he has since then steadily built up his experience writing, producing, and directing film with TV on both sides of the Atlantic. Thank you both so much for joining us, and I know my voice slowly started to wind down, so I apologize for that. But we're so happy to have you here. And today's official name of the webinar is From Tradition to Innovation, the Evolution of Art and Cinema in Pakistan. So thank you again very much. And I think we can just jump right into it. Mustafa, you want to roll out the first question?
Absolutely, yeah. So thank you again for being on. And so Iman mentioned Laal Kabootar, and you both have worked on it. So Hania, I'll start with you. What are you most proud of while working on Laal Kabootar?
Thank you for the introduction and thank you for having us here. It's really lovely to be with Bilal. One fun fact is we actually he lives across the street from me, so we could have technically been sitting together, but I guess it's easier for us to have our own cameras. But yeah, Bilal is a lovely friend, and thank you, Bilal, for joining this. To your question about what I'm most proud of in Laal Kabootar, I think the team that we put together, my brother and I, we were co-producers on the film. And the team we created, we found people handpicked from all over Pakistan. Most of them were concentrated in Karachi. And we did our best to give them the freedom to do what they do best. While obviously there are constraints, budgetary constraints, cultural constraints, what you can say, what you can't say. But I would say building that team was what I'm most proud of. Yeah.
Good to know, Hania. Thank you. Bilal, over to you.
I think the thing that I was most proud of is Hania and Kamil, actually, because when we met, they were sort of almost like straight out of college, and they had this idea of wanting to make a movie. And I have been now doing, I'm going to age myself, but I've been doing this for 25 years now. And it's next to impossible to get something made anywhere in the world. And in Pakistan, there's the added layer of lack of finances, infrastructure, desire for movie making market. And despite all of that, these two somehow or the other managed to get not only a movie made, but a movie that was actually very good. So that's, something to be very proud of.
Thanks, Bilal.
एक दूसरे की तारीफ हो, बस.
Before you ask your next question, I love that the bio mentioned your acting career. We would love to hear about your Jet and Bond days and working with Fawad Khan before he made it big.
Nobody to hear about that. No. Great. The best thing about my acting career is that it happened before YouTube. So
can we not find this on YouTube?
Again,
Jet and Bond?
I would not recommend that I'm sure you guys have lives and you would like to spend them fruitfully rather than wasting YouTube clips of me from
Dr. Evil.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know, Bilal Sami played the role of Dr. Evil, and he was my icon before we met. But sorry, Mustafa, back to you.
No, so Hania, do you have a picture? Do you have a poster of Bilal Sami as Dr. Evil on your wall? Is that why he's not in the room right now?
No, actually, I should have. I did take his autograph back in the day. I think I have that autograph somewhere. Yes. Before we became friends, I was a fan of his.
This was really funny because if there is a fun fact, it's the fact that after we started working on Laal Kabootar together, one day, I think it was Kamil who showed me, it's my autograph from when they were, I think, 7 years old on a napkin.
Bilal, why are you aging yourself?
I mean, why are you not happy with me characterizing you as a child? But that was really funny. They showed me the napkin on which I'd given an autograph at one point.
Yeah. At Hotspot, we ran into you and we wanted your autograph. Kamil and I both were there together.
Different life almost.
Yeah.
Wow, Hotspot! What a way to connect with each other, huh? Speaking of that, so I'm curious, what are you guys both working on currently?
Bilal, do you want to go first?
Sure, if you want me to. I've been working always as independent sort of filmmakers. You kind of have to you always have multiple projects going at the same time. The one that I have been on for the last 2 years, the primary project that I've been on is a 6-part documentary series for Disney Nat Geo, and that it's being made by Imagine Entertainment, which is Ron Howard's company, and I'm the series sort of like co-producers on it, and it's a show called Do Not Attempt. It was actually just announced. The first look for it came out a couple of days ago, and that's gonna premiere next year at some point. It stars the magician David Blaine, and it's an exploration of magic and esoteric and sort of extreme practices around the world. So it goes to 6 different countries. Every episode is in a different part of the world. So that's what I've been working on for the last 2 years. And the upcoming project that I have is a documentary feature on the cable car rescue/disaster that happened last year. So working on a project on that. And then there's many others. But those are the 2 big ones that I'm sort of like on these days. Hania?
Yeah. So I am right now a full-time mom, so all my projects are kind of on hold. But as Bilal mentioned, to be an independent filmmaker, you have to be working on multiple stories. And one of the stories I am working on right now is a horror film that I'm very excited about. And it's set in Hunza and northern mountains of Pakistan. So using some horror elements that are universally scary and setting them in a remote village in Pakistan makes for an exciting, interesting combination. So that's something I'm working on right now.
I know about the cable car incident that happened last year. I forget the location. Was it anywhere near Hunza?
Not really. It's close to Buttergram. It's a rural
That's
village
right.
closer to there. When I say close, it's it's a few hours away from there. It's an 8-hour drive, partially on a highway and then on sort of like unconstructed roads from 8 hours from Islamabad, 8 to 9 hours. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay. I was just curious if there was a crossover there that you were both alluding to, perhaps. So you've talked about being independent filmmakers and working on a lot of projects at the same time, concurrently. So what makes a film successful?
I guess that's a $1 million question. If we had the answer to that, we would be billionaires. We're kind of always figuring that out as we go. I think there are some things that work in successful films that's common to all of them. Speaking to an audience and being authentic is something that's common to at least most successful films. Bilal, would you like to comment? What do you think makes a successful film?
Sure. And I mean, it also first of all, like you have to think about like what the measure of success is. What do you mean?
Yes.
What does one mean by successful? And that has changed over the years because the industry's changed over the years. So at one point, success would have meant turning a big profit or like making a huge amount of money. I mean, that for some sort of filmmaking, that's true. For independent filmmaking or when you're trying to make it, so apologies for that. The fact that you can get something made, you can raise the financing to be able to get something made and distributed. That itself is a measure of success because the hit rate in filmmaking and television is so low in the sense that so few things get made out of all the things that get started, that's even, if you get something made, that's success in itself. And then, with the changing landscape with streaming, now that you have streaming platforms as a possible buyer, profit gets sort of capped because you're not going to, if something becomes a hit, that doesn't mean it's going to remain in the cinemas forever. It goes directly. So the profit margin gets capped, but the fact that makes it a more sustainable way of making movies because there is a place where that it's going to go and you're going to make your money back. And so that makes you capable of making more things because you successfully put something out made a reasonable amount of money for whoever invested. Maybe it's the streamer itself. So, I mean, there are many ways to measure success. For people like
Yeah.
me and Hania, I think the primary, with somebody who has like been doing this for a very long time, my measurement of success is, did it get made and
Yes.
did it get seen? That itself is
Yes.
enough, because there will be another project.
Mhm.
Keep doing this.
Mhm.
If you're not doing this as somebody who's a hobbyist who wants to make a movie and then will move on to their, dentistry career or something. Not that there's anything wrong with a dentistry career, but somebody who wants to like just keep doing this, then you kind of have to think of it as one in a series of things that you're going to do in your life, and not one of them is going to define, what your career is or what success is. It's
Mm.
some of the parts that makes a difference. From
And
this.
then
Sorry.
yes, and another thought worth sharing is that what is the measure of success in terms of uh, the film? Is it a box office success, or is it critical? Are the critics loving it? Is it seen outside the boundaries of your country? Is it reaching people outside? Like there are so many measures of success. Like Joyland is an incredible film. I don't know in Pakistan if it was a box office success, but it was a beautifully made film that critics loved, and it reached outside of Pakistan, and it was playing here in New York and playing in other countries. So there are different measures of success. Mola Jat, on the other hand, I think was a box office success as well. Um, so
The
so it depends on what you're measuring.
Bilkul. And Wallajar is an interesting case because one thinks of it as a box office, which it was, but it's also a film that was made and then could not get like distribution or couldn't get really sold for almost like 7-8 years. So,
Yes.
it took a very long time for it to come out, and a theatrical release, because they were trying to get, for a very long time, they were trying to get a streaming release, but for various certain reasons, finances being one of them, it didn't get that distribution. So then you have to think about like, this is, the one project that those people, let's say, did for 8 years. And that
Yeah.
money that the box office makes spread over 8 years, is it still a financial success? I mean, in absolute terms, yes. But in terms of like, a product that's been around has to justify the cost of 8 years of existence, is it still a success in terms of monetary terms? I mean, it did really well and was really well made and everything in it worked, but that's a different measure of success. But then my point being, it's a complicated question and answer, and you kind of have to take into consideration all of those things.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you for answering that, and just answering and mentioning the boundary of your country. I'll switch it over to Iman for the next question.
Yeah, I was gonna say Hania was almost ready to answer our next question for her. But what makes the film global? And I guess in a sense it's probably a question that's just as difficult, but perhaps narrowed down just a teeny bit. So like Hania mentioned, how does the film go from one country to another, break its borders, etc.?
I really liked, I forget where I heard this phrase, but someone said that you have to go local to go global. And you really, if you are authentic, if you're authentic to your human experience, it may be in a remote village in Pakistan or in Korea or anywhere in the world. If you are authentic, it speaks to the human experience outside your boundaries, and I think that is, if you can tap into that and tell an authentic story, you can transcend borders. Bilal, would you
I
agree? Or
completely 100% agree with you. It's a very good way of putting it, but the more authentic and personal and specific a story is, the more it resonates, because then it's not trying to be generic, which is the death of sort of like storytelling. We try to like approximate what the audience you think wants to hear. That's not a good way of doing it. And Hania's done a great job of speaking to the thematic side of things. And then there's the business side of things, which is one thing that makes it global is distribution. Like, can you find people outside or the money that you need to distribute? And, Hani and Kamil have come across that hurdle with their movie, which is you make it, and then there's one side of it is getting distribution within Pakistan or making that happen, which is one kind of challenge. And it's a big challenge because it's a small country with very few cinemas. So to be able to turn a profit, that market has to work in a certain way. And then your movie has to go out in a certain way and be seen by enough people and be talked about by enough people for more people to see it. That's one. And then getting it out of the country means, okay, now I have to look for either a streaming deal that goes in the rest of the world so other diaspora audiences can watch it, or distribution. And then when you go into distribution, which countries can you actually get it seen where there is a diaspora population? There's always a language element, like we speak Urdu, which is the same as Hindi. So that obviously makes it easier in places where those languages are spoken, because then it's not a subtitled film that, sort of people who are not native speakers are watching. So many challenges when it comes to distribution and getting it seen, and for people to sort of like think about it that way. Korean cinema, for example, has done a great job, but it's taken them very long to engage audiences and to convince audiences that it's okay to consume a cinema not in your language.
Yes.
And they've
How
had
did Korea do it, Bilal? Sorry, I'm
volume.
cutting you, but it's like
Yeah.
K-pop and K-dramas. They have become so global. Why can't Pakistan aspire for that? Or what would make you
I think we aspire to it. I don't think we kind of have the infrastructure or the finances that's needed for it. I mean, India does it as well. India has done it over many years. Their diaspora and by their I mean ours is part of that diaspora population that speaks Hindi or Urdu and hence consumes Bollywood. So their releases are international releases, and they don't even almost need a white or like a non-native speaking audience. White isn't the right word, sorry, but non-brown audience, let's say, because their own audience has such a large footprint that it'll be, if it's good critically or commercially, it'll have an audience internationally. I think Korea is actually getting to a point where Bollywood has been for a very long time now, which is that they are also international in the same way and being seen. Parasite won a couple of years ago, but movies like Salam Bombay was got the nod in the 80s, I think, if I'm not wrong. So they've been doing this for far longer. We just don't have the finances or the infrastructure or political stability almost that you need to build a cinema or the arts to a point where it can go beyond, your own boundary. I want to apologize because I don't want to sound pompous or all-knowing. I'm talking a lot, so stop me whenever you need to stop.
No, Bilal, that's why we love having you here. Sorry, back to you.
Absolutely, yeah. So thank you for all your thoughts. One thing that your conversation reminded me of is a few months ago, there was a Korean filmmaker who actually won an award, and in his acceptance speech, he said, once you get over the barrier of the 1-inch subtitles, you open yourself to a whole new world.
Yeah.
So I just felt that was very fitting.
Parasite?
That was Bong Joon-ho for Parasite when he accepted. That's what he said, yes.
Yes.
I think for his Golden Globe, he said that. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So my next question was really going to be, how can Pakistan cinema be relevant outside of Pakistan? But I feel like you've answered that pretty much really spot on. So we can just go on to the next one. And I'll combine the next two. So, let's pitch it as a two-part question. Does the Pakistani government support the film industry in Pakistan? And can Pakistan ever be a hub for cinema?
Do you want me to go or you want to go?
You go.
I think the government, I think in simplistic terms, I think institutionally it does not at all, in my opinion. But
there are some tax cuts though.
I mean, there's some tax cuts, but that's not the same as encouraging. That, I mean, it does encourage, but it's not it's not like there are, many countries, India included, Canada, Europe, all of Europe actually has film funds, or like they have a ministry that actually tries to encourage filmmaking by giving grants, by not just tax cuts, but financial incentives, both behind the scenes, both in monetary terms, but also in terms of like what they will do for the film, for it to be able to be seen, to create jobs that are in the film industry, because it helps the economy in general. So many ways of doing it. And Pakistan, I mean, I don't blame Pakistan, because one, the economy has in our lifetimes only gotten worse, unfortunately, and they've never really concentrated or given money to this side. And then the other thing is also like cinema in many ways is supposed to be a financially sustainable, it's a business, it's the entertainment business. It's not the entertainment sort of,
donations and
non-profit. Yeah. So it's supposed to be self-sustaining. To a certain extent, the government bears some responsibility to encourage filmmaking. But in Pakistan, because the business of it has dwindled, and a lot of it has to do with what happened to it in the late 70s and 80s, where cinema died out, did not update, did not catch up on technology, the culture of going to...
There was no competition. We were banning films from across the border.
And we've done it
and
all
that,
again. That really does actually hurt, despite whatever the locals will think. The idea of encouraging entertainment includes creating a bouquet or a variety of things that can happen, and not just what you're making. Because for a business to work, you need year-round activity. You need people to be able to go out and think like, oh, one option is that I can go to the cinema. And knowing that regardless of what time of the year it is, there will be something in this, cinema, or there'll be options to choose from. And when you ban cinema, what you do is you remove options. You're like, Aap jaye, and there's only one thing that's playing, or nothing that's playing in your language. That will slowly remove that from the consciousness of people. They'll be like, oh, who knows? Like, we'll go to the cinema when we know something is happening, but right now let's go eat somewhere. And that,
exactly. It hurts the culture when, let's say, we ban Indian films. India is producing one film a week on average. And that, if we are, inviting those films into our, viewership, it allows the cinema culture to have a year-round, year-round culture. And that's where Pakistani films will also benefit. So when we banned Indian films, it actually kind of hurts us, because that's the language our people speak. English films don't make that kind of an impact in the culture. So that's an interesting question, actually, because you assume that banning competition would increase or help our own cinema, but it actually hurts it in the long run.
I think also it's a false flag operation, because it doesn't. We're not living in China. We're not in a sort of economy and a government where when you say ban, you mean nobody will ever see that thing. The funny thing, all you're doing is actually preventing it from being in cinema specifically. People will watch it on TV. And if anything, if they're getting it on TV for free, or for like the price of a CD or a DVD, you are creating a secondary channel for them to consume cinema, which prevents them to spend money in the actual cinema where they would otherwise. If you gave them the option of watching a big, Bollywood production in the cinema, as opposed to a $25, $20, sorry, 75 rupee, 125 rupee. I'm again quoting prices
CD.
from 15 years ago.
Back when.
DVD or whatever, or like a US, however they watch it, like illicitly, or download it off torrent or something, or watch it on a streamer now, which is, they're all available internationally. You watch it up direct, if not directly, then on a whatever. I'm speaking too much, but you're basically, when you say you're banning it, you're not banning it. You're just
people are consuming it. You're just not monetizing it for the people who own cinemas, and actually you're not even making the money. The government isn't making money that it could for every ticket sale that is taxed. So kind of counterintuitive or counterproductive.
So all the arguments against it to me feel very foolish.
Mm.
Thank you for that, both. I find that really interesting. Thank you for expanding on that, Bilal, because I wouldn't have registered it the way maybe that you guys, had then explained it. I kind of thought of it, oh, what is blocked is what you will never see. So that's interesting. People can literally still watch it in their house.
Mhm.
They're just not, you know,
We
being
always have, we grew up on, everybody in Pakistan, even now, like we grow up with Bollywood. You watch the new,
Yeah.
like Shah Rukh Khan thing comes out, like
Mhm.
it doesn't matter if it's not in the cinema or not. They'll
We'll
find.
watch it.
Yeah, and I guess jumping off of your Bollywood comment leads to our next question. In fact, we have, is Pakistan open to different genres? Is there success beyond, the typical Bollywood rom-com? And I know there has been, but is there a movement? Are we looking at a future of different genres?
I think there's definitely more productions of different genres, but like Joyland is a different genre. Laal Kabootar was also a different genre. Barzakh is a very different genre, but somehow the different genres can land, like Joyland was banned in different
provinces.
provinces, I think. Only Punjab allowed it to play, or I might be getting that wrong, but the specifics wrong. But playing with different genres means taking some kind of risk, and somehow that's where the audiences can get offended by the kind of genres that then get introduced. Bilal, would you like to comment?
Sure. I think it's going back to the business side of it, it's a volumes business. Cinema has always been, it's like the book business or any sort of consumable art. And so the larger the industry is, the larger the amount of the pool of money is in a market, the more chances there are of being able to take chances and doing something that's different. It's not to like denigrate it, but like it's the same as like if the only thing being sold is like one kind of milk, that's going to narrow the the buyer. And if there's more money, if there are more people taking, there was like 6 types of things available. Slowly, there might be other things that people might like at a smaller level, but then there's obviously like more chances of different kinds of things being made, and that expands the palette. Going back to our sort of analogy, going back to filmmaking, if there's 40 films being made, if you made 5, or there's chances of like 8 or 10 of them being different. If there are only 4 films being made, people are going to try really hard. The financiers are going to try and really hard that they really wanted every one of them to be a success. So, and when they do that, the instinct is to try and make a commercially successful film, which allows for less experimentation, right?
Yeah.
So the economies of it in many ways dictate the ability of the filmmaker, or the more importantly, the financier, to take a chance on a filmmaker who's maybe making something slightly different.
That's a very interesting perspective.
So I think it is a matter of like, just let it happen. Just like put money into it, create a culture of it, and then like Bollywood, there's like they're coming out with their Bollywood masala film, but you'll also see a ton of like interesting, varied art house cinema or like smaller cinema, and those are amazing as well, and they're successful as well, because in a country that has like whatever 6,500, 7,000 cinemas, it for it to make its small amount of money back, it doesn't need to be a massive hit. And in Pakistan, there's like whatever, like 110 cinemas. Can you imagine like the comparison, like 6,500 compared to, for similar populations, we have 200 or 300 cinemas or screens. And the amount of like number of people that you have to get to a cinema just like repeatedly, just because there's such a small number of cinemas, to make your money back, if you just think in terms of like that visual image, it makes it harder. Like the same film has to be in cinemas for so long, in all of them. So all of that makes a difference. I feel like there's always voices and writers and people who want to take a chance. It's a matter of like with whether the financiers are willing to take that chance with their money, because at the end of the day, it's a business.
Right.
So you guys talked about, we banned the competition from India in terms of getting the movies, but my understanding is, we haven't really banned the TV shows or the TV dramas that come from India. And, Pakistan also has a pretty burgeoning industry, my understanding is, from TV dramas. So, is there a market for Pakistani television in America?
You want to answer? You want me to answer?
I think Bilal is already making television for America from Pakistan. The cable car. So it depends. Like if you get out of the Saas Bahu drama that is playing on Hum TV, there are stories to be told from Pakistan that are very, very interesting to people outside of Pakistan. And Bilal, would you like to speak to how like this what you're making is it's not for a Pakistani audience. It's going to be filmed in Pakistan, but you are exporting that story outside.
So, I mean, yes. First of all, it's a documentary, this one, specifically the one I'm making. So that Pakistanis don't, or like there's the perception that Pakistanis don't consume documentaries, which is not true, but that's how we're perceived. So yes, there is a market for films abroad. I will tell you that there is the one thing that makes a huge difference to the sellability of a commodity as an international thing is language. So when it comes to documentaries, they will want it to be English speaking, at least some of it, because they feel like the language barrier. And this is investors and streamers from here who will actually think about and make decisions on whether they want you to make something or not based off of which languages are being spoken in the thing. And if it's not in English, then what they will do is they will send it for approval to your regional streamer operations, which usually for Hindi or Urdu end up being in India. And then it becomes more of a political sort of battle, which is to say that anything that needs to be greenlit for the international audience on a streamer, specifically a streamer, is going to be greenlit out of India. So it depends on how things are between India and Pakistan and who's willing to take a chance for political reasons for that to, go through. And so like this has always been, this is the history, this is part of the reason that the politics actually hurts both sides. For them, I think it prevents them from getting the stars and the stories that they get from here, which they love, which is like, they love Fawad, they love some of the big names. Whenever a drama becomes hit in Pakistan, it's sometimes an even bigger hit in India because they love our television. The same way that we love their cinema. They get a voice and a story, kind of storytelling that even with the Saas Bahu, they're not getting on that side because I feel our TV is much more developed than theirs in terms of storytelling and a kind of like filmmaking that doesn't exist on that side, because I feel like a lot of their talent, this happens with their music as well. A lot of their talent goes towards Bollywood because there's just so much money to get there that it gets concentrated. People are trying to hit it big in cinema, not in television. So our television, by virtue of that, rises beyond their quality of television. Always has, actually, from the time of PTV and in the 80s and 90s. People still remember that. So there's definitely a market internationally for sure. But the dynamics of it change very quickly. And the money is everything. Financing, distribution. If there is money, if people are willing to take a chance, there will always be an audience, because there are South Asia, the South Asian diaspora is, I think, the second biggest in the world after China, if I'm not wrong. So there's a massive audience all over the world. It's a matter of like, is there money being sort of like put up? Are people trying to take a chance? And if they are, I think things will get made and get sold and get watched.
Yeah, good to know. And I mean, you're right. Yeah, the South Asian diaspora is the second largest one, so there's just a lot of potential there. So the next question I was going to ask is, why are so many few films coming out of Pakistan? But Bilal, I believe you answered that by, there's the lack of competition that exists in the market. So, the next question I'll pitch to Hania. So when you think of Pakistan, a lot of things come to mind. And similarly in a film industry, right? It tends to be male dominated. So, how were you able to navigate that when you were producing Laal Kabootar?
So actually, most industries are male dominated, but I, in my experience, did not feel like this industry was male dominated, or at least my experience was working one with my brother, so there was this family dynamic on set, and then also the consumers in Pakistan of dramas are mostly women. And if you see Hum TV is owned or run by women, and Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy, the biggest name to come out of Pakistani cinema or films, is a woman. So I did not feel isolated that way, or like my voice didn't matter. So I would just challenge this perception. Yeah.
I applaud that, and I think that's really great, especially from the lens of the outside. For example, like I guess I'm now outing myself to the audience, but I've only been to Pakistan once and I was one. So my
Okay.
connection to my heritage is quite literally the festivals and the suburbia of Chicago and watching dramas with my nanny and watching Bollywood. And while it's great and I love it, I wonder these things about perception, about what it is like in Pakistan for, people, females who are working and especially in this industry, because I think in at least the US, and Bilal could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the producer sphere is male dominated in the US. But Bilal, you could maybe speak to that.
No, absolutely, but obviously things are a little better. I don't know. I hate to like mansplain women's role in film, women who are on screen right now. Um, I know that at least in my experience working here, there are a lot of women who work in documentary for sure, and also in feature. But you're right, a lot of the money, uh, at least in the Western world, and the power rests with men who tend to be CEOs, and specifically white men. And that's just the truth. But I think over time, slowly, hopefully, fingers crossed, that should change, and that should change not only in terms of gender, but also in terms of race and sort of the type of people who are in decision making sort of places. I think two things I want to say. I do know that obviously it's harder for women. There is no doubt about it. They have to work, times and a half harder, if not more, just to get the same amount of sort of respect and money in many cases, and that's very unfortunate. The most competent people I've ever worked with here and back home, my 2 or 3 longest running successful collaborations were with women. They're much more competent, much better at doing shit, much more organized. And I mean, I'm not just saying that. I think it's a function of, and it's the unfortunate byproduct of the fact that they kind of have to be to just get the same opportunity as an incompetent man, for example, such as myself. So that's been my experience. It is harder. It is harder to make but it is getting better. The representation is getting better. Pakistani television has a lot of female or directors. The actors are popular in their own right. It's a small pool, obviously, but it's not as bad as it used to be, but it can always be better.
Actually, I do want to say that I can only speak to my experience, and I'm not speaking to a general experience at all. In my experience, I've been very lucky. I did not feel sidelined in any way or that I had to struggle more, but that's not speaking to the general experience at all. So just want to say that.
But I also feel, I mean, just one tiny point, which is that having people like Hania in the industry, and Hania is one, there are many, it really has an exponential effect on other women's ability to be in the industry, because it makes sets and that environment safer, more sort of like, more open to other women. Women feel more safe when there are other women in any work environment, really,
Yes.
but which applies to film as well, obviously. And entertainment always has a little bit of a stink attached to it because it's entertainment. But like the more women are in there, the more serious it becomes. So like anything, like one person being there means tomorrow there can be like 10 or 15, and then that exponentially really makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Just to get a time check, we have one or two more questions, and then we can move to Q&A, which I see we already have a few sitting there. So I guess from the both of you, maybe we could just end with this question so we make sure we get to our Q&A is, what is your one piece of advice as for people starting off in the entertainment industry? Because notably, it's one that is difficult to get in and probably even more to keep pushing forward despite, encounters someone may approach.
I don't know if I have advice. I mean, for someone who's already decided to enter the film space and becoming a storyteller, it's not an easy, straightforward path. It keeps changing, the industry keeps changing, you have to keep pivoting. So, for those who are at that point where they're deciding which path to take, only come here if you are willing to keep adjusting for the rest of your life and pivoting. And the other advice, I guess, would be to be authentic. Say what you know from your experience. That is what helps you connect with other people. Going back to, you have to go local to go global. Be local to yourself. Find the story you want to tell, that you are in the place to tell. Like it's an authentic story coming from you. I would say that's a great place to start, is to find your authentic voice.
Me, sorry. I mean, one is very generic, but it's very true as well, which is that if you're a student of filmmaking, I'm using that as a generic term. I mean, educate yourself. Like, just if you're going to be a writer, you can't just have read like 3 books and then start writing a book. There's so much out there. Just watch and read as widely as possible and try to be non-judgmental. There's all sorts of stuff out there. Expose yourself and let yourself be taken on a ride instead of judging things. I think that's most people's problem is like, not problem, but like the biggest shortcoming is that we don't educate ourselves enough, or because of our biases or lack of exposure, sometimes lack of opportunity. I feel like that barrier has gone down because of the internet now. You have access to and are exposed to so many more things. Back in my day, you only had like pirated VHSs from Pakistan, from China that would come into and then you rent them. That's the only way to expose yourself to international cinema. And so you randomly saw stuff sometimes, or were seeing only sort of like hit things. So that's one thing. Like, there's access, use it, and watch meaningful things, read about what's, people are talking about and saying this is great, and watch it and see and be analytical if you want to be a filmmaker. And then the other thing, which is very important, which is, me saying this after being in this for so long, is that ask yourself why you want to do this. Because entertainment or like filmmaking is also not one thing. There's like 40 different sides to it. So asking yourself why you want to be there might actually help you slot yourself into the right part of entertainment where you can be, And that's very important. And being honest about it. Like, I want to do this because I want to see my name on the screen is a very different reason than because I like working with an editing machine, or because I'm a great, like, I like being a photographer, or like I'm into, like, those are very basic things, but sometimes you find out many years later, like, oh, I don't actually like that part of it. I like just this part of it. So that's very being introspective and being inquisitive about what elicits an honest response from inside you is very important. Like, yeah.
I love the word you use there. You have to reflect and introspect before you pick this path, because if
It's not
if you're not doing it for the right reasons, you won't last here. But if you've introspected and you're like, this is what I want to do, then you'll take on the challenge. There
Thank
will be
you both.
many.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, that's the end of our questions we had for you, but we do have some questions in our Q&A, and I'd love to hand it off to Khadija, who's back from her tech and is here to assist with Q&A.
Thank you so much, Iman. So we do have a few questions for you. The first one is the Indian industry a competitor or more contemporary?
Or more?
Contemporary. Oh, wait, no. Complementary. I'm so sorry.
I think we've already
I think we just I at
spoken to
least
that.
we're sort of addressing that, which is that I don't think it's a competition. There's always there's always competition between two products or two things, sure. Like, but that's the same as saying, like, is this book a competitor of this book, or are they just being sold in the same dukan? You know?
Yeah.
So, yes.
Definitely compliments, for sure. If that's the yes or no question, it is competition in the definition of, I guess, like, they are making Hindi Urdu content, we are making Urdu Hindi content, but it helps us that we show their films, or we see their films. We improve our craft by seeing what else is out there as well. So definitely complimentary.
Thank you so much. The second question is, why does Pakistan specialize in dramas but not movies?
Because the economies are very different. The way the business works is very different. Television is free to consume. It is financed by advertising and will always run because there will always be companies that want to advertise. So by virtue of that, for there to be some entertainment to be financed, it keeps getting made. Not because people people obviously have an insatiable desire to consume stories, but it keeps getting made because somebody wants to sell you, washing powder. That's why. That's always been the case. So it will exist and it will proliferate because that's just the world we live in. Cinema itself, it runs on box office tickets, or used to at least. And now, and now even the new version of it, maybe not box office ticket, but runs on subscriptions, or some of that runs on advertising sometimes, which is why, because some of it runs on advertising and some of it runs on subscriptions, that model is now sort of like disrupting the way cinema used to work in a good way, which because there's now a place for more cinema to be seen without the massive barrier of having to be a cinema release and the onus of
the physical.
The physical thing, and just like the economies of getting something to cinema. It's a very expensive process, as Hania and Kamil found out, and we all do every time we release something. It's because cinema died out, because the culture of cinema and the economies of cinema were starved by government regulation, actually. So when you do that, it's a business. If it stops making money, stops being profitable, it will slowly dry out, which it did. And now it's like slowly getting better, because now that there's no regulation, there's some regulation still. No Indian movies in Pakistan still, but at least the economies of it can, sustain themselves, where business people are like, okay, if I start a multiplex and, there's a restaurant in there and there's concession stand, blah, 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 I can make some money. So it's coming back. Whereas television never needed that. It's self-sustained.
Thank you. Would you like to add anything to that, Hania?
No, I think he's answered it perfectly. The only thing that was coming to me is that we already have the infrastructure of people have televisions, and the people will invest in a television in their home. So the physical thing you need to consume television, individuals and households are spending that money to get those televisions. Cinemas require a whole other effort. You know, you need to build a whole cinema screen and cinema house, and it needs all these other, like the economy, the economics of it are very different. So, but Bilal has already answered this question. I was just adding to what he said.
That sounds good. Thank you. We have another question. What makes Pakistani cinema different from Indian cinema, and what is Pakistani about it beyond it from Pakistan? And also, what are the defining characteristics that separates it from Hindi cinema?
I would challenge why would you really need to find a separation? Like, art is art, and it we use the same language, we speak the same language, our style of telling stories is similar. We like song and dance, they like song and dance. We're the same country, 75 years ago. So why insist on finding a different identity? Of course, naturally, things have evolved differently. Urdu sounds maybe a little different from Hindi, as you become more and more pure in Urdu and Hindi. But I don't know. I think the question is asking us to be different for the sake of being different, and I think we're more similar than I don't know. Bilal, what would you say?
I would say it's same but different, which is how sort of culture works, which is that there is commonality in language and some cultural elements. But going off of what Hania had said actually earlier, which is that the more personal and the more authentic it is, the more it resonates. And the personal and the authentic of a specific region can be so different despite all the commonalities, and we're finding that out, like, even with like the reason that, for example, I'm going to bring him up again because he's been part of the large conversation that's happening right now, is our javelin thrower. One of the
yes.
One of the fascinating things about Arshad Nadeem is everybody's like, so where is Mia Channu? And like, oh, this is the life. And look at what he did with a bamboo stick in his backyard. And it's not like that doesn't exist. It's always existed in our backyard. Mia Channu has been on the way to, many places in Punjab that we've driven across, and we see it, but maybe a Karachi person doesn't see it. And, it's a very specific cultural blue and language and everything. And that, even something that specific, if you show that to somebody from the south of India, for example, there will be commonality, but there's also something that is very distinctly different about it. And that's what makes it a Mia Channu story. And, or, in a larger way, that's what makes it a Pakistani story. You're not going to find that there, even though there's commonalities. And that's what makes it specificity of a story, the authenticity of it is what makes it Pakistani. And that's what resonates. If you make a generic story, that's the problem with it, that you're diluting sort of the flavor of it. And nobody likes, I mean, some people like diluted flavors, but, the more authentic it is, the more it resonates, I feel.
Thank you so much. So we have a follow-up question. If Pakistani cinema is same as Indian cinema, then are we also like Bangladeshi cinema or Afghani cinema? And does having a national identity to a cinema, is that important in the global market space?
May I?
Sure.
Yes.
I think that's not something you engineer. That's going to happen by virtue of there being an identity. if you just take the word cinema out of it, that's the same as saying, is Pakistan different from Afghanistan and different from India? And is it important to be different? You're not in control of the difference. We're not robots that are being given like a set of things to be. The identity exists and it bleeds because, we weren't sort of nation states 70, 80 years ago, but this is the new idea. So culture used to bleed from border to border. There would be similarities, people would move, and that would create new cultural milieux everywhere. And that exactly is what cinema is like. It's going to have a very distinct, its own flavor, but it's also going to have things that you resonate. And as you go west or east or something, it'll blend and bleed into something else. You watch Iranian cinema, which some people, or like a lot of people, are now exposed to, and you will see many things that you are sort of like that look very familiar, and then you will see other things that don't look familiar, that are very distinctly theirs. And it's the same with India. Like if you watch southern cinema, or like their Tamil cinema, it has a very distinct flavor because it's from there and off there. And then there's other things that are crossovers that you will feel is distinct to them. So what was the last part of that question? My point is, like, you can't engineer it. It's not like we set out every day to make Pakistan. Nobody does it. We're just making cinema.
Yes, as filmmakers, we're not thinking that,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna go out and make a film that says it's Pakistani.
Yeah.
It just is Pakistani. I mean,
yeah. If anything, the problem happens and you might have noticed is when a Pakistani filmmaker tries to make a Bollywood movie, or like what they think they're trying to commercially replicate something that's not off there, and so it doesn't ring true. Almost, you'll be like,
that's true.
it looks like a B grade, Bollywood movie. And the reason it feels like that is because it's not authentic. You're trying to replicate somebody else, thinking that they are successful. Maybe you can be successful by virtue of copying them, but it's never going to be authentic.
Okay. So I do want to reiterate the last part of the question. It says, does having a national identity to a cinema important in the global market space?
Yeah, I mean, I guess yes, of course. For all the reasons that I just mentioned. Important in the sense that the reason something will resonate is because it's specific. Generic things don't. Generic things could, on a commercial level, for the same audience that is consuming it in the original place. But for an international audience, I bet it's actually more, like a Joyland is more meaningful than a random masala movie from Bollywood.
Yes.
Something against it, but there's a reason that, an international person might not want to go and see that, because that thing is creating a certain kind of entertainment that is not relying on a specific point of view and experience. It's trying to entertain. So that's why it gets consumed by people who are expecting entertainment, of which I am one. No, I'm not like putting it down, but I'm saying chances of it resonating and translating a lore because of the fact that it's not specific in the same way that a really authentic small story can be.
Yeah.
This is all my opinion, obviously. I should do a disclaimer.
Thank you so much. Hania, would you like to add anything to it?
No, I think Bilal covered it.
Okay, perfect. So those are all the questions. Oh, wait, no, we have another one. Okay, sorry. What would Pakistani cinema need to have a crossover with American audiences like South Korea cinema has had with American audience, given the fact that US audience is a major global audience?
Yeah, we were actually just, I sort of posed this question to Bilal, that what made Korea what it is in the global, like K-pop and K-dramas. I don't have the answer to this.
I feel part of the answer is that you need to make stuff that resonates with your own audience first. And the specificity of it and the authenticity of it will make it do the crossover.
But Bilal, right now, what we are producing, like
Yeah,
Saas Bahu stories, they are resonating with our audiences, but
yes, not
they're
across.
not, yeah.
Yeah. Those aren't crossover stories because I feel like they're
Mm.
about a very specific. But I mean, it depends on the kind of cinema as well, because there are people will watch some American audiences, even brown audiences will watch K-pop, Korean melodrama or drama. Korean drama,
Yes,
very similar, interestingly, to
that's
Pakistani,
true.
because it's
That's
melodrama, it's
true.
the same genre. And so if an audience is looking for that, they will come to other languages and take chances. And that happens. Like there are Pakistani dramas that are seen in places sometimes where you're like, how did you see that? Or like, how did it get to you? You know?
Really?
Yeah. I've heard many stories because Pakistani dramas just happen to be on, there's many places in Africa that'll watch it because it's freely available
Oh,
on YouTube. But
yeah.
one thing is access. Like, is it available? If it is available, is it marketed in a certain sort of way? Like it's available in the US, but it's only available on YouTube where it gets lost. There are no channels pushing it specifically unless they're being watched by the diaspora audiences themselves. Korean stuff exists on Netflix. It exists on Amazon. It exists on these international platforms where there's a possibility of a bleed over, and people might take it. If I feel like if Pakistani dramas were to slowly start coming to platforms that are being watched by audiences, at least they will be available. And then if there's a hit,
Yes,
Lord,
we'll be
then
in the running.
you'll be in the running. You hear about something that's successful. If you put Parasite on Netflix, which they did,
Yes.
you'd be like, oh shit, they won that award. So maybe we should try and watch. That's not, it's not even available right now, Pakistani at least. And multiple reasons for that, nobody to blame, but that's just the way it is right now. If that changes, I feel it'll slowly change for sure.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know we're over time. We do have another question, but it's fully up to you what you want to do.
You guys, I'm fine. I
I think
spare another minute.
we can end.
Oh,
Okay.
One of us has to start.
I'm going to turn it over to Iman,
Yeah.
but I do want to take a minute to say thank you so much for your time. I think it's so important to hear creatives from people like yourselves, and we hope to see you achieve a lot more in the future. So Iman, please,
you.
please close.
Yes, thank you both. I do want to apologize to the questions we couldn't get to. There's a bit of spark of questions towards the end, which is always encouraged, and we really appreciate that. But we're about 15 minutes over, and we want to be mindful of everyone's times. Thank you both, Bilal and Hania, for joining us. This has been an excellent discussion, beyond what I think anyone else could have thought. Energetic, amazing, and just intriguing as well. And I personally learned a lot. I'm sure everyone in the audience did as well. And I guess a big round of applause, as Khadija said. We can't wait to watch and see what else you both produce or act in. You never know, Bilal.
Dr. Evil.
But I also want to mention that we have all of our webinar sessions and podcasts for this week are recorded and put on YouTube. And for anyone in the audience that hasn't watched Laal Kabootar, go for it, go watch it. It's amazing.
It's on Roku.
Yes. Awesome. But beyond that, everyone enjoy your evening. And we look forward to seeing everyone back tomorrow for our next session, which is
Thank you.
sure. No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Bilal, for joining last minute. I asked you to
I'm
join,
happy
and
to
this
do it.
was
And thank you for
wonderful.
inviting.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Appreciate it. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.